Coming up on episode 104 of the Behind the Back podcast, our overreactions for week 2. Stick around, they're going to be really fun. And then we talk about the Eagles. We review the Eagles-Chiefs game. I get Ben's take on the Tush Push, the Eagles offense. We have to talk about that a little bit. Some interesting tendencies that we kind of saw. Is that going to be a problem moving forward? We discuss that. And then we also discuss our score for the Eagles versus Rams week 3. Then we pivot on over to San Francisco. Talk about their matchup against their division rival, the Cardinals, their 2-0 start, the success of Mac Jones, and will they be able to keep it up? Ben gives us his keys and his score for the Cardinals game. With that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan-Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Reds, Ben, it's been a week. Welcome back. How are you feeling, brother?
It's good to be back, man. I missed the studio. I missed my Pookie Bear, Brock Purdy. I missed him last week too, but Mac held it down. But I'm happy to be back. I'm feeling good.
Heck yeah. Love to hear it. So let's, like you guys heard in the intro, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. If this is your first time on the Behind the Back podcast, welcome. We are here to talk about a lot of fun stuff, as you guys heard in the intro. If you guys haven't heard us before, please stick around. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And if you could give us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, or give any comments to any of the horrible takes that we will be having on this show. So we brought this topic out last week, and we are going to bring it back again. We're doing overreactions. Last week we had quite a few, week 1 in the spirit of everything, but we each selected one this week that we wanted to roll out from a very exciting week 2. Football has not been disappointing so far. So Ben, I'm going to toss it over to you. What is your overreaction for week 2?
This is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but I'm here for it, honestly. The Chargers are a contender for me. Look, they were 11-6 last year in their first season under Jim Harbaugh. They made some great additions in the offseason. They got a big W in week 1 against the Chiefs. They got a good win against the Raiders last week where they got 3 interceptions off Geno's trash. Like, they're winning games at multiple levels right now, and it looks promising. Herbert looks really good. The quarterback whisperer in Jim is in full effect. Like, bro, I'm looking at their schedule. I'm looking at the teams they play. My only gripe about it, it's an easy schedule. How battle-tested is this team really going to be by playoff time? And that's kind of the part where I'm wondering if it's, even really safe to call this team a contender. But they have a pretty easy schedule, and they have an opportunity to really stack wins, stack momentum, and I think that's going to play a massive key in why I believe they could go the distance.
That's totally fair. And I'll give it to you. They did look impressive. Herbert did look good. He did have a couple moments though where I'm like, he did get away with like an interception. He threw it right at the guys. Like, he had his moments, but they played really well. The Raiders, they didn't look so hot, and that was definitely something that was concerning. But I do think the Chargers defense looks real. Obviously Khalil Mack suffered that ugly injury, and he'll be back in a few weeks is what they're saying. So, and I know they lost another offensive lineman as well. So they're kind of dealing with that injury bug in their trenches. Their skill players have been awesome. Ladd, Keenan, having Keenan back, I think has been a really nice boost for this offense. And Quentin Johnston has changed the narrative on everybody, right? So I think this is I understand why you would say that. And I think given the state of the Chiefs, I think that's even more believable now. Now that the Chiefs are 0-2 and the Chargers are now 2-0 in their own division, and with a chance to go up 3-0 when they play the Broncos on Sunday, I think especially if they come out this weekend and win, I don't see why that take couldn't go any further, because they're probably actually, for the first time in what has been almost a decade since Mahomes has taken over, no one else has won that division. So it'll be very interesting to see if the Chargers end up being that team.
Total side note, you mentioned Keenan. Did you see the video of Keenan with the shoulders? That was crazy. I looked at the comments and I did a little bit of research on it. I guess that happens when you have separated shoulders and issues like that. I guess that kind of thing happens. But if you guys haven't gone out and seen that video, it's after they beat the Raiders. He's like calling the Raiders fans trash, and he's just talking his talk, and you see his shoulders like popping out through his workout shirt. And dude, it was crazy. It was really gross to look at.
I thought it was fake. I wasn't sure at first. I was like, "Oh, this is a not normal way to look." But yeah, like you said, I did. They read some of the comments, and they said that is something that happens. So it is an interesting thing, but I guess it doesn't affect his play. So whatever works there. But I do think, you know what? I think for our former BTB third team, the Chargers, I think that everything is kind of lining up for them. They will play the rest of the NFC East. You know, they will have a date with the Eagles. That's going to be a very fun matchup when they get there later on in the year. But I think that, you know, everything is kind of falling in place for them. And everything around the rest of their division's kind of falling apart. And we'll talk about the Broncos in a second as part of the next overreaction. But I think that, the Broncos have given away opportunities to to compete with the Chargers here. So I think that the Chargers, if they just keep playing the way that they're doing, the way that they're playing is very sustainable. Herbert is slinging it and their defense is executing. That's exactly what you want. And if they keep that up, they're going to be, I don't know if I'd put them at the same level as Buffalo or Baltimore, but I think that they are in that next tier. Like they might be the best team in that next tier now. That's how they've looked so far to me.
That's fair. So I want to hear your overreaction based on week 2.
All right. So my overreaction for week 2, I think after 2 games that Daniel Jones might have a shot to have a 2022 Jalen Hurts-like year where he could potentially be top 5 in MVP voting this year based off of how he looks in the first 2 weeks. Now, the numbers say everything through the first 2 games. And so the week 1, they played the Dolphins. We already talked about, and we've seen in the first 2 weeks, the Dolphins falling apart. They're not a good team right now. But they looked really impressive there. So did Daniel Jones. And they played the Broncos, who everybody, I think the consensus around the league, the national media, everyone talking about the Broncos, were like the Broncos are guaranteed to have the surefire, potentially best defense in the league. And they give up, 30 points to the Daniel Jones-led Colts. And I think it's a mixture of, for the Colts, I think what's really working well for Daniel Jones is Shane Steichen has a very good system that it works for Daniel Jones' style of skill set. He is a great athlete who can make great throws, but he's not the most accurate. He has his moments, but when he's on fire, he looks amazing. Very much kind of like what people thought of Jalen Hurts in a way in 2022. And Daniel Jones has 2 touchdowns through the air. He has 580 yards passing, which is second in the league. And it's only second because Russell Wilson needed 450 yards in one game to catch up and pass him. So I think Daniel Jones has that with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 3 rushing touchdowns. You see them using his athleticism and natural size to their advantage. And they have weapons. This is kind of like what Daniel Jones had success with in 2022 when him and Saquon were doing the load and they made it to the playoffs. Only Jonathan Taylor looks awesome, and their offensive line is actually solid in Indianapolis, and their receivers are solid. Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce, plus Tyler Warren has been a focal point of that offense, the rookie. They have all the pieces necessary for Daniel Jones to succeed, plus a viable play caller in Shane Steichen. And their defense is still a little suspect. The Colts, they definitely have given up a lot of points, but they're doing just enough. And the offense might be the thing that shoulders his team. And then what I would say pushes him into the MVP conversation of it all is there's a legitimate chance now, especially with how the AFC South played out, that they could win this division. They're up in the division 2-0. The Texans are 0-2. Jacksonville choked a game against Jake Browning and the Bengals once Joe Burrow went down. So the Colts are in prime position now too. So that's kind of where I'm buying the Daniel Jones hype. I think he has a team that believes in him now after all this Anthony Richardson drama. It kind of worked out for the Colts in a way. And I think he's going to have a green light this year to just kind of say, this is the best chance we have and we're going to ride with Daniel Jones.
So I like that take. I'm not mad at it. My thing is like the game against Miami, sure, Miami's trash, right? The game against Denver, going into the season, obviously, like you kind of alluded to, the emphasis was that the Denver Broncos were going to be the best, if not the best, one of the best defenses in football. And so far through the first 2 games, I haven't bought that, and I'm not really counting game 1 against Tennessee for them. I don't think that really has a lot to do with their defense. So I'm not sold on Denver being a good defensive team. I want to see the Colts, and specifically Indiana Jones. I want to see him specifically have a good game against an actually tough defense. And if he can sustain throughout, this first 8 weeks of the season, if he can sustain this level of play or close to it and remain atop, I don't even want to say atop. If he just remains better than what he was in New York, I can buy into this a little bit more.
And I think that's totally fair. And that's another thing. It is, it's 2 weeks. Quarterbacks can be on heaters in 2 weeks. It's totally, it's valid. There's not tape on Daniel Jones in the system yet, right? So I think that, maybe as the year goes on, it catches up, but maybe, Jonathan Taylor, they can shoulder that load with him and have him be the focal point, very much kind of how the Eagles utilize Saquon, and even the Giants at that point utilize Saquon. Jonathan Taylor played awesome, and they're utilizing him on the ground and through the air too. And I think that is sustainable so long as he stays healthy. And I think that, I have faith in Shane Steichen, the coach. He's just had a lot of bad luck, with having a rotating carousel of QBs, and Anthony Richardson hasn't worked out yet. And that still remains to be seen, because the Colts, if Daniel Jones keeps this up, are going to be faced with a very similar decision that the Vikings made with Darnold and McCarthy, right? Like, do they want, are they going to utilize this Jones moment to either make him the guy long-term because he's still young enough, because that's kind of the same bubble as Darnold too, or do they want to still roll with Richardson and see if they can get something for Jones next year, right? So I think that for Daniel Jones, this is a win. And I think that there is a chance for him to continue at this pace, because what they're doing on offense seems sustainable. And I agree with you. If they, we need to see them against better defenses. I'm very curious to see how they play within their own division. Jacksonville and Houston, whatever their records are in that division, is still going to be, Houston's a respectable defense, and Jacksonville has its moments too. So I think that that'll be a great chance for them too. So yeah, that would be my overreaction for week 2.
Fire.
So, all right. So let's talk about the games this week. So we're going to start in Philadelphia because they play first this week. But before we talk about the Eagles and Rams, I wanted to just talk a second. I wanted to get your perspective from Eagles Chiefs. What do you think? Did you think, what were your takeaways, that, if any, from that game?
Ban the tush push, man. I'm so sick of that play. I'm sick of officiating it. The tush push wasn't what won or lost this game for the Eagles or the Chiefs. The narrative this week to me has been really funny. Going into this season, we talked about it. Should they ban it? Do we think it's going to get banned? What are the reasons why it could or won't get banned? They made one point on television that made a bit more sense and could be a reason why they ban it in the future, and that is that it's just tough to officiate. As for the false starts and the lineup and everything, I think you were always going to get that first down running the tush push anyway. The problem with it is, like, it's a penalty the way it's being run, which backs you up, which in that case you wouldn't be running it again. But here's the thing. The Chiefs didn't capitalize on their opportunity. And Shefty, we kind of talked about this offline. Adam Schefter, he went on a little bit of a tangent this week about the tush push and it kind of gave the idea, or made the impression that the tush push was the reason why the Chiefs lost the game and why the Eagles won. It was really the Travis Kelce drop that turned into an interception that went 70 yards the other way. That was the turning point in the game, because at that point that would have put the Chiefs up. And at that point you got to kind of question, like, would this offense for the Eagles, and I know we're going to talk about this, would this offense for the Eagles that seemingly is struggling through the air right now be able to lead at that point, a game-changing drive down the field. So that, to me, was the biggest thing. Ultimately, though, I love the Chris Jones trash talk at the very end, and I thought that the response from Jalen was very Jalen. I wouldn't expect anything different from him. So I'm not gonna lie. Through 2 weeks, I don't think this is the Eagles team of last year. I need to see this team find a rhythm soon for me to really start believing in them. But look, you got the Chiefs right there, second straight game against them. That's tough enough to do. They're now 0-3, 3 straight losses for the first time in Patty's career. They're 0-2 to start the season. Like, this is a team that's, now got a lot of questions circling them. So to get that win was huge, because otherwise, if that was a loss, would have been questions the other way.
And I agree completely. I think, for the tush push of it all, I agree that, like, if it's a penalty, call it. And if it's missed, I understand, like, the frustration, because I agree, like, and that's the point. Brady kind of, now that Brady said something, now the spotlight's back on it, because they had policed the Eagles on this back in 2023 when it was kind of a talking point. And Kelsey went on New Heights when it was first starting up, and he had this whole thing about it. And he also talked about it again recently on the most recent episode they just had. And it's interesting because he does make a good point, as, like, it's easy for us who get all these awesome camera angles and stuff during the game, or even after the fact, that we can slow it down to a fraction of a second and notice this jump off. But in real life, in game time, in the game, the refs are standing, you got the refs, front and back of them, but the line judges are way further away. And there's no, it's really hard for them to notice those little details when everyone is also scrunched up. And one thing I want to address too is, like, I've seen on Twitter, I've seen the people trying to make these lines and stuff. They're like, oh, he's lined up over the ball. That is true. You know what else is true? The defense is always lined up in the neutral zone as well. So it is a two-way street. Yes, the Eagles are false starting, but in order to combat the Eagles always false starting in the eyes of everybody, they're always intentionally lined up in the neutral zone. So everyone's cheating on this play because no one knows what to do about this play. And I understand why people want to get rid of it. I understand. And I've said this the whole time. I understand why, but it's frustrating that this is still the conversation we're having. And now it's like, we finally found something we can use to get rid of it, versus, that was always kind of a valid reason to begin with. Now everyone's just kind of come up with it because they're sick of the play. People complained about it when it first happened, but people were like, at first they're like, oh, this is funny that this team, the Eagles always kind of seem to have this play. And then it became a thing in 2023, and we were like, oh, they're actually, this is like a play now. And then people got annoyed with it. Then the Eagles won the Super Bowl off of it, with that being a huge focal point. And now with the price of success, people don't like you anymore. They want to see your downfall. So it's like, now we're looking for any reason to come up with it, because everyone also thinks that if the tush push goes, so does this Eagles offense, that they can't convert with a 4th and 2, God forbid, with Saquon Barkley or Dallas Goedert or AJ Brown or Jalen Hurts, or, they're like, that'll cripple the Eagles. So I just think it's interesting to me. Maybe you're right. They will, the success rate on 4th and 2 might go from 85% on tush pushes to 60 with with our guys, right? So I think that, like, it's easy to say. So it is interesting for the whole tush push of it all. So that's kind of my take on it.
I do think it was kind of a factor of just how the game played out. Like, if this was one play and done, and the lineup was a thing, and the false start was a thing, we can brush it off. It's fine. I'm not saying that they did it 4 separate times, but you ran the play 4 separate times, which drew light to it 4 separate times. And so by that last time, there was kind of this fatigue on the play of watching the play from a fan standpoint. And there was that clear evidence that Brady pointed out, one of the camera angles that, like you said, like, referees just don't get. It shows clear as day something that obviously isn't a part of, a regular play. And so from that standpoint, I think you having seen it 4 times, having seen the way it shook down, and with one of the GOATs talking about how, it wasn't right, it just kind of drew a little bit more light to it than usual. I think give it a couple weeks, as long as you guys don't run it like 3 straight times next week, I think it'll be under the carpet and everyone will move on.
I think that, the funny thing is, I think the Eagles are still going to run it. I just won't be surprised if they're going to go out of their way to really enforce the lineup right away. Like even if like it was an accident and these guys are maybe still shuffling and adjusting at the very line, if they see Tyler Steen move up a little bit, if they see Landon Dickerson line up a little bit, they'll call it right there. It's going to be made an example of this week. That's going to be hyper focused. That's going to be the talking point. People are going to be like, are they going to run the tush push now that the refs are on them this time about it? Is it going to be successful? And they're still going to run it. The Eagles are going to run it. They have ran it correctly before. It's not like they do this every time. That's the frustrating part. They make it, and I've heard multiple media pundits be like, oh, they do this almost every time. Oh, let me pull up 4 examples when they've ran this play over 100 times. I'm like, they don't always do this. And I understand that teams, but every single play in an NFL game, there is a flag somewhere that's not being seen one way or the other, whether it's a hold, a deep, a holding on the defenders, on the wide receivers, things like that. Like there is a flag on every play that doesn't get called. So I think that, people are mad that it's a play that works. Still, people are mad that they can't stop it. People are mad that they think that the Eagles are cheating, and then when the Eagles don't cheat, they still get it. So I just don't. But everyone's also cheating to try and stop it. So I understand that this will probably be the momentum needed to remove the play, and that's fine. Listen, we got what we wanted out of it. We created this whole culture out of it, but it's also going to be a bigger FU when we come back next year and still look just as awesome without it. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just ran normal QB sneaks and still got 2 yards just to say F it, because that's how it's going to be. If they're like, okay, we're still better than you guys at it. So that's kind of the tush push of it all. Okay. I want to address what looked like a very stagnant and poor offensive game from the Eagles. Jalen Hurts had 101 yards. If you want to go net passing yards, because that includes sacks and things like that, he did get sacked twice. And Jalen took a nasty slam from a rookie who I forget it, Norman Lott, I think is his last name, from Tennessee. He got Jalen. Jalen was trying to exit the pocket. Nice, lifted up in the air cleanly. It was a very nice slam by the young man. So, you got to give him props for that. But Jalen had 94 net passing yards. The offense as a whole did. He only had 15 yards rushing, and Saquon had 88 yards. So like the Eagles only got 213 total yards of offense. And when we talk about what are the issues, there's been a lot of predictability with this offense so far. And Shane Half, and I'm reading a tweet from Shane Half, he did a good job of looking up all the different plays, how the Eagles were lined up, and what they ran out of those formations. So I'm going to do my best to read this quickly, okay? The Eagles formations, and this is from Shane Half again, Shane Half NFL. The Eagles formation majorly tips off plays they will run. Yesterday in the Chiefs game, 11 plays from pistol. One of them was a pass. So they ran 10 times out of pistol out of the 11 times and passed once. 14 plays were under center. None of them were passes. They were all runs under center. Every single time the Eagles got under center, they ran the ball. 33 plays from shotgun. 26 of them were passes. 7 runs from shotgun. So what does this tell you? If they're in shotgun, they're passing. If they're under center, they're running. And if they're in pistol, they're running. And that kind of you could kind of see that was kind of happening. And so there was a combined 25 plays from pistol or under center. The first play of the game was a pass. And then there were 24 straight runs from those two formations. Even if you exclude the 7 tush push plays, which is a fair thing to exclude in this example, that's 17 of 18 plays from those formations as run plays. So of the 7 shotgun runs, 2 were back-to-back carries by A.J. Dillon in the first half, and 2 were draw plays on 3rd and 15 and 16. If we exclude the draw plays, that's an 84% pass rate from shotgun. And A.J. Brown was noted. We're like, oh, where was A.J. Brown in this game? He had 5 catches for 29 yards. He had ran the same route from the same line, from the same spot, 10 times in this game. They weren't even trying to do anything different. They had AJ go on a deep shot at the very first play of the game, but then Jalen had to move out of the pocket and he fumbled the ball, so that play. And AJ was open. So it's not like they're not attempting to manufacture these deep plays, but there is something predictable. And I don't know if this was intentional. I don't know if they're saying, hey, we can win. We knew we could win this way against this team right now. We don't want to show what we have against the Rams. Maybe we want to say, here's all of our tendencies, and let's go break them next week. Maybe they're trying to do something like that. I don't know if they're good enough to be doing that. I don't know if that's a smart way. They're 2-0. They won the game, and they did it. Jalen's one of the very few players, and I think this is the understandable part of the Jalen Hurts conversation is the fact that he is one of the few quarterbacks ever that win when you don't produce through the air. I think the Eagles are 6-3 in games that he has thrown for less than 125 yards. And the rest of the league in that time span was like 5-17 in those scenarios too. Because again, the Eagles are one of the few teams who don't throw the ball as often. They don't get the same numbers, and it does compound a little bit. But then the same issue is whenever there's a play to be made, like that throw to Devontae Smith, it gets made, and they win the game. And that's like Ben said with Chris Jones. Chris Jones was like, y'all didn't even have 100 yards. And Jalen's comment was, we won the effing game. Shut your ass up. And that's how Jalen's wired. And I've always appreciated number one for that. That's why that's why I respect him the way he does. And that's also why I respect the Eagles so much, is that they don't care. And this took Sirianni and Hurts a long time to learn, because in 23, they bowed to the pressure of the national media. They're like, let Jalen Hurts rip it. Like, he looked awesome in 22. Like, let's do this. It didn't work out for them in 23 under Brian Johnson. And now the Eagles are kind of in a similar situation with Patullo. And I'm not going to put this all on Patullo, because he's been in the Eagles organization, so he has an understanding of things. Part of this is on Jalen. Part of this is on Sirianni, too. I think it's a coaching and a choice to be conservative. But they know they can do this and still win. And if you're winning 70% of your games doing this, why change anything? And the Eagles these in 2024 after the bye week and up until these first 2 weeks have not conformed to what everyone else wants to see from the Eagles. Let's see Jalen Hurts throw it more. No, we're going to get first downs. We're going to win with our defense. Jake Elliott's going to kick 2 huge field goals to seal the deal, and we're going to get out of here with a win, and it's not going to be how you guys want it to be. So that's kind of my take on the early 2025 offense, is that it's going to get better. I don't believe this is what this offense is going to be, because they're going to be in deep trouble if they are. The fact that we are 2-0 despite the production. Week 1 was weird because of the delay, and I've said this a couple times. They were cooking up until that delay. But this Rams game is going to be interesting. So that's kind of my take on the offense. I don't know what you have to think about that.
So I just, you made a good point that I'm going to build off at the end, and then I'll throw it back over to you for the Rams. But I don't know that there's ever been a team that valued proving media wrong over wins. And that, to me, it's like you said, you're winning games at almost a historical rate right now. Why the hell would you switch that up? Regardless of what the media is saying, regardless of, like, the only reason to me that you would consider switching up your scheme at that point is if you had a guy like an AJ Brown who has kind of a fiery moment like he did last year, where it's like, bro, get me the freaking ball. Like, I am just running out here for nothing. What am I doing? Like, you're paying me this much money for what? Which, mind you, he's probably not thinking that necessarily, but he's probably like, yo, can I get the ball once in a while? I don't know. You made a good point there, and it kind of rings true. It's kind of a way I got to defend, because it's like, all you ever want to do as an NFL fan of your team, or as an NFL team or an organization, is win. You're not out there to prove the media wrong. Like, you're out there to win the freaking ball game. So what are we actually doing right now? Like,
And at that point, it's also, that's when we talk about the Jalen Hurts combo, it can't just be like, oh, these guys win in the regular season, they won the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl winner. So now you get now he gets the luxury of saying, I've done it. I can do whatever I want now. Like, there's nothing you guys can tell me, because the whole narrative around Jalen Hurts was he's never going to be good enough. He's never going to be a franchise QB. He can't lead the Eagles to the Super Bowl, or to win a Super Bowl. And he's been to 2 of the past 3 Super Bowls, almost won both of them, and he ended up being a Super Bowl MVP. Now his highest priority appears to be, doing whatever it takes. And I think I've never felt him and Nick Sirianni more in lockstep before than I do in this particular season. I do feel like the extension of what they went through last year really rings true for both of them. They're like, this works. Let's keep doing it. And now everybody on this team, AJ looks frustrated. I see it, and he, to his credit, this entire time has always been, and I understand he's made a comment here or there, right? But he has been a good trooper. And it's not like he's taking plays off in games. He is not. He's still doing everything that he is asked to do. And he's going to have a big game. And he's going to have a couple big games this year. And it's going to quiet down a little bit. But I think it's for him too. People want to say, and he's come out and said that his goal, AJ Brown, is to be the one. He loves dominating his opponent. He loves the opportunity to just crush his matchup. But at the same time, they've asked AJ Brown what's his favorite moment ever as an NFL player, and he said winning the Super Bowl. So he also said that when that high from winning the Super Bowl didn't last as long as he thought, but that also doesn't mean that he didn't value that Super Bowl win. So I think that he knows, like, this is it. Like, I don't know if it's a guarantee that AJ finishes his career as a Philadelphia Eagle, for the sake of, I believe that he does want more than what he has now. And now that he's won a ring, it kind of inclines him to potentially take the more personal route moving forward, and no one would blame him for it. So that's something I am paying attention to, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles were low key ahead of it on that. And maybe, let's say they win this year and AJ has a very quiet year, and AJ's like, hey guys, like, I love you guys and I love what we've done. And if we've gone back to back, maybe he sticks around to like try to go for history. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if he said, look, I've done my part. And these past 2 years, I've done it and kind of sacrificed what I wanted. Now I want to go get mine. And I'd totally be okay with it. And he would still go down as arguably probably the best receiver that the Eagles have ever had. And I'd be okay with that. So that's kind of my take on AJ. So sorry for the rant there. But now let's talk about the Rams game and why for me, this conversation about our offense, I don't know if it applies to this game. I don't know if we need Jalen Hurts against the Rams. I don't know if we need Jalen to throw for 250 plus yards against the Rams, because you know what's happened the past 2 times the Eagles have played the Rams. Saquon Barkley has gone for over 200 rushing yards by himself in each of those games. So when I look at the Rams defense, and listen, I complimented the Rams defense in the offseason. Their front 7 is disgusting. And not to mention, they seem to be having a fun linebacker story in Landman. I really have been hearing a lot of good things about him, and his play is kind of showing out there. Huge addition. They have some cornerback depth issues. The Rams defense has played well, but they did play Tennessee last week. Tennessee is not prepared to win just yet. And they kept it pretty close for a little bit there. Tennessee did. And then week 1, I forget who they played Houston, and that was kind of a defensive barn burner for a little bit there, but a close game. So Matt Stafford, he got hit a little awkwardly by Jeffrey Simmons in that game and was limping for a second. We still don't know how healthy he truly is. But their skill position players are undeniable. And when we talk about what's the Eagles' biggest weakness on defense, it is that cornerback 2 spot. Adoree Jackson is still playing, and we're going to have either one of Devontae or Puka at all times on Adoree Jackson. And I would not be surprised if that is their intention for this entire game. And I think that that's probably what we're going to be seeing. And that's usually an issue that the Eagles have to deal with this Rams team. And I think the discussion around this game, as it usually is with the Rams and Eagles, is the Rams have always been a fun, spunky offensive team that can keep up with anybody. And with matchups against the Eagles, everyone always picks the Rams. They're like, oh yeah, I think the Rams got the Eagles this week. The Eagles have beaten the Rams 9 of their past 10 meetings. They're 3-0. Hurts is 3-0 against Stafford in the past 3 seasons. And the games with the Rams are always fun. Like the Rams start off hot. It always starts off this way. The Rams start off pretty well. Matthew Stafford looks like he's cooking. Eagles offense figures it out. Jalen Carter makes a big play on Matt Stafford. And then the game goes back and forth for a little bit. The offense kind of stalls out on both sides. Matthew Stafford or Kyron Williams, for example, they each had 2 fumbles in the playoff game or an interception. Like things like that happen. And then the Eagles seal the deal. Last year, I think the fun topic that everyone likes to address for last year is that they were 20 yards away from beating the Eagles and potentially moving on, and maybe they would have been the ones to advance in the Super Bowl against Washington. I would like to remind everybody that in that game, although he did have a nice run at the very beginning of the game, Jalen Hurts did get hurt in this game towards the end there too. And then for that whole last quarter, he was hurt. And Matthew Stafford was pretty healthy at that time in dealing. Matthew Stafford is hurt now, not 100%. Guaranteed not 100%. Jalen Hurts and that offense, 100% healthy. I am very curious as, yes, these young guys on defense, Byron Young played awesome last week, Jared Verse, and I'm not sure about Fisk. He played some last week, but he's been playing through an injury, and now there's a chance that he might not play. He's questionable. He might not play on Sunday. That would suck for them. But there is a chance that there hasn't been much change on this Rams team. And they weren't, Tony Pollard got 94 yards on them. I think that there is still an opportunity for Saquon to have a huge, huge game in this game. And I think that they're going to, what's been the recipe against the Rams for the Eagles is run Saquon down their throat. And I will not be surprised if that's how we try and start this game. So I don't know how you think, if that's the best approach for the Eagles, or do you think we're going to see a big game from Hurts in this one?
This is a tough one for me. I said Saquon was going to get his 100 yards last week, and he was close. He kept going backwards on me. I was a little upset about that. But I think right now where I'm at with this, I look, you pinpointed it. I look at this wide receiver room. Matthew Stafford is still dealing to the best of his abilities. He's not mobile in any way, shape, or form. And so from the pass rush standpoint for the Eagles, I'm wondering how many hits Stafford is going to and can take in this game before Jimmy Garoppolo steps up to bat. But yeah, man, I think this wide receiver room is going to give you guys hell. I really do. I think the Adoree Jackson problem is a problem, and it's not something that Fangio has necessarily been able to disguise and hide yet. I think he's still dialing that in. And until that is addressed, unfortunately, you've got to see one of the better wide receiver rooms early on. And so for me, however this game needs to be won offensively is how this needs to go. I mean, and that's lame of me to say, but if it's through the air and that's what's working, so be it. Regardless, if it's on the ground, so be it. Regardless, this is going to be a high scoring game, I think. The Rams will find ways to score. They've been trying to dial this thing in as well. And last week they looked a bit better. Puka has been their number one option throughout the season so far. Devontae is getting doubled pretty much every single play. And on this, if I had to guess, I would think that, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Mitchell. Yeah. I'm thinking that Quignon's probably going to travel with AJ or with Devontae. I think that's probably the best option at this point. He's the most elite route runner they have, but it's going to leave Puka wide open. And as far as, getting the ball to the wide receivers, especially like Tyler Higbee, for instance, he hasn't seen a lot of touches so far to start the season, but Travis Kelce was open quite a bit throughout the Eagles game. And missed opportunities, which is expected because he's kind of washed at this point. But my overall takeaway and analysis of this is, regardless of how you need to get points, if I had to guess, I think it's on the ground. I think Saquon's going to eat. I'm going to say it again. I think he gets his 100 yards. I'm going to freaking nail this one of these times. I think he gets his 100 yards. I think it's one on the ground because, to be honest with you, I haven't seen enough from Hurts this year to trust that he can pop off. It's not to say he's not being a good quarterback. It's just I'm not expecting him to be the one to go and win the game. I'm expecting him to be the one who doesn't lose the game. So from that standpoint, I expect Saquon to keep it a competition, but you guys got to find at least one passing touchdown in this one, I think, because throughout the first half, Saquon might eat. Second half, they're going to tighten up and they're going to force Jalen, I think, to beat them. And that's when this game might boil down to it.
So if I, keys to the game for this one, I think for the offensive side of things, stick to what works. Whether it's through the pass or through the air, whether it's through the pass or through the ground, whatever's working, stick with it. Stick with the hot hand on the offense. It doesn't matter. Don't, stay the Eagles, do what you want to do, run your game. That's all. That's how the Eagles win, is controlling the tempo and making the game theirs. It doesn't matter. Stick to your game plan, Eagles. I don't care if Jalen has 50 yards this week if we win. Dude, make it right. I don't care. I'm tired of this. I don't care anymore. He's a Super Bowl champion. He can win with 50 yards, and I will not care. He is a top 5 QB in my heart, and it does not matter. I don't care. That's the thing about everyone else's discussions about him. I'm numb to it now because I'm like, my guy's a winner. Every quarterback that they love is not, and I don't care. So that's where I'm at right now. So stick to what you're doing on offense. Defense, hang in there, Adoree. You're going to be the key in this one, my boy. I'm interested to see. Fangio went completely off script against Patrick Mahomes and blitzed the crap out of him. And that's something that Fangio is not known to do. But because we have Campbell and Makuba, they did a really excellent job of doing so and being able to disguise blitzes. I'm very curious with Matt Stafford being a statue. Do they take that risk with him, especially with potentially Steven Avila, one of their offensive guards, is potential. He's questionable. He might miss this game. Their O-line, their interior O-line's already having issues. Jalen Carter has a shoulder issue, and you had brought this up to me earlier today off the pod, and I didn't think about it at the time. But you had referenced, you're like, oh, did you see? It looked like Carter was taking some plays off. Jalen Carter did get hurt in the Chiefs game and played through injury. There was times during the game where you could see him kind of just holding his arm a little weird, kind of holding the wrist a little bit, kind of like slinging it. And then when it came down to him when the play was about to happen, he just went down and went for it. And if he didn't get it right away, then he was kind of just like, okay, I kind of have to sit this out. But despite that, he still got 3 pressures, 3 hits, and he was very effective in that game. And that was also his first game of the season. This shoulder thing has been an issue in the offseason. He missed a lot of training camp because of it. Weren't sure how he was going to come back. Vic Fangio says he needs to get in better shape. That's something that they've talked about and they're on the same page about. So that wasn't an issue. It's not like he doesn't question Jalen Carter's ability to get in shape. He's just out of shape right now because he missed basically all of training camp with that shoulder injury. So that is something to watch. He's limited in practice. He's probably going to play, but we'll see if that impacts him at all. But I still don't think I still think he's going to get one big play on Matt like he normally does. He's done it every single time they've played each other. He makes a big play. So I anticipate a Jalen Carter game. But injury-wise, the Eagles are doing okay. Dallas Goedert is back at practice. He was limited with a knee injury. He missed last game, which also might have attributed to some of the offensive struggles too. So he's questionable, but it looks like he's on track to play. So that will be huge to have him back. So maybe the offense looks a little bit more comfortable with their safety blanket and Goddard, who really has turned into that kind of insurance for Hurts as that third option. So Adoree Jackson, it's on you. I hope, that, just do your part. I'm probably going to rip you after after you give up a few plays. But do kind of what you did last week. Make a few plays. Hollywood had a really nice catch where he literally just hung on to it, even though Adoree was there first and literally had it. So it's like Adoree had some plays, but he also had a play where he literally ran into Cooper DeJean, and that was that missed Tyquan Thornton pass where he literally just slammed into Cooper. Tyquan was wide open, and that's where Mahomes missed, and that was a missed opportunity there, right? So it's like if we have one of those moments, I'm very, very nervous to see what happens. So the Eagles' defense is going to be a question mark. But if we want to do a comparison, take a look at what they did against the Cowboys with Pickens and Lamb, right? Devontae Adams probably isn't going to be dropping the ball 4 times. Nakua probably not going to be dropping the ball 4 times. But, there is a path if we can generate pressure on Stafford and force him to make a mistake. If we can force him to make a mistake in this game, that's been our MO too. We don't turn the ball over, but if you commit 1 turnover, we're going to win this game. And that's all it takes. So the Eagles play to make another team make mistakes. It's okay if they give up a first down. They're not worried about that. They're just worried about what can I do this play to make an impact, to maybe get a turnover here. And we saw what happened in the Chiefs game. We saw what happened week 1. That's just kind of been their MO. So the Eagles defense can force a turnover on Matthew Stafford, whether it's pressure. I'd love to see it. And honestly, I'm just excited to see what happens. If I have to give a score, I think it's going to be a contested back and forth game. It's at the link. The Rams are a team we saw it with the Chiefs. We saw how salty and upset they were. Kelsey was like, "I'm sick of this ish." Chris Jones was they were people. We're starting to turn into that team where I like how we saw teams play the Chiefs. They were pissed if they made a crucial error. Now it's kind of been that kind of energy towards the Eagles. If you make a mistake on this team, that could be the reason you lose a game. So even though we're playing C football at best, we're nowhere near what we could be. And we're still going through, first month, it's still preseason for the Eagles starters. So we still got 2 more weeks before the excuses run out for me over here. But the Eagles, I think if I had to give them a score, it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be back and forth. But I think the Eagles are going to get a crucial turnover. Jalen's going to make a play or two, but I think Saquon's going to have an awesome game and control this tempo. I'm going to say 28-24 Eagles, because Stafford will probably throw 3 touchdowns. But I think the Eagles' offense will be enough against this Rams defense, who has played well to start the year, but we have been their bugaboo. So I'm very curious to see if they have what it takes.
I've got 30-27 Eagles. I think it's high scoring. And in the line in this one right now is 3.5-point favorites for the Eagles. So, I think, like you said, for all the reasons, it's for every reason to believe this is going to be a close game. It makes sense. This in the most recent history, this has been a good matchup, and it's been electric to watch. It'll probably be the most watched game of the morning slate on Sunday. And that has a lot to do with just what went down in the playoffs last year. But I'll tell you, man, the question marks around the Eagles offense, the question marks around Stafford and if he's still able to, play to the level that he was capable of with all these back injuries and everything. There's question marks on both sides for both these teams, and I think we're going to see some answers this week. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be a fun one. But I do have the Eagles 30-27.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. So I think final thoughts on the Eagles. The Eagles are very much in control. The Rams are a good team. If, the Eagles gave themselves luxury in the division, the schedule gets a little harder here. These next 3 weeks are going to be quite challenging for the Eagles, so it's going to be very interesting to see if they can step up. Now the competition's getting for real. The Cowboys and the Chiefs, everyone, the Chiefs have kind of turned into now. They're like, how good are the Chiefs right now? So we don't know. And the Eagles played a battered version of the Chiefs, so they weren't a great team that we just played. And the Cowboys, we had no idea what was going to happen in week 1 after post Micah Parsons and all that stuff. And that was a good game, right? But now we're playing an NFC contender in other people's eyes, maybe not in our eyes specifically, but this is a team that can get hot at the right time. This is a tough team to play, and we play the Bucs next week. So we got 2 good matchups to see how the Eagles offense really find a spark. Can they respond? And that's what we're going to be paying attention to over these next few weeks. And we're going to see over under. How many penalties on the Tush Push do you think we're going to see in this game?
I don't think a single penalty. I think it's pretty clean.
So if I set the over under to 2, you would think we go under?
Yeah.
Okay. Curious. We'll see what happens. So we'll see. You guys let us know how many Tush Pushes you think are going to get penalized in this game. And how do you guys think, if the Eagles have a great chance in this game? What are your score predictions? Let us know. So let's pivot on over to the Bay. We got Mac Jones, maybe, right? So we'll talk about that in a second here. But right now, it's slated. Mac Jones going to play the rival Cardinals at home. First home game of the year at Levi's. So break it down. Why was there a slight question mark when I said Mac Jones? What are we looking forward to in this matchup? What are you hyped up for, my friend?
So I'm hyped up because this is going to be the home of Super Bowl 60 this year. and they're going to be debuting the new video board that they put up all off season. So I guarantee you that's going to be one of the things that they talk about for 5 minutes too long during the game on Sunday. But I'm excited, man. You know, I kind of said, I talked about it in the post game a little bit. This is the 7th time that the Niners have started 2-0 on the road before coming home in their franchise history. They gone to the Super Bowl 4 of those 7 years. So we'll see if that happens. Again, this wasn't the year that I was plotting this team to go to the Super Bowl, but I will tell you this was a season I wanted this team to build on. And on those first 2 wins, I learned a lot about this team, and I feel good about the direction of this team, given how many young guys there are that are, you know, being slotted in positions they may not have expected to be in this early. And I think the way that they've been winning games, the gritty manner that they have been, you know, getting these wins, it's forming an identity for this ball club. And that's something that last year, with all the stars last year, even still, this team lacked an identity because they didn't focus that much on week 1, 2, 3, 4. It was screw the regular season. Let's just get back to the playoffs where we know we do our dirty work, and we'll get right back to the bowl where we belong, right? That didn't work out. So I learned a lot about this team. I think this team learned a lot about themselves. They found an identity. I love what I saw. So on that note, Levi's going to be popping, and I'm excited for that. There's going to be a whole lot of red in the stadium because it's Cardinals versus Niners. That's red versus red. So here's, you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Cardinals to start, because they're a question mark team for, I think, you know, for me for sure, but I think for a lot of the NFL as well. When you look at their first 2 games, they are also 2-0. They've beaten the Saints and the Panthers. Okay. So Saints game came down to the wire. They eked out that win. Panthers game, Cardinals went up pretty big early on. They had a comfortable lead. And then after halftime, things really stalled. They couldn't move the ball. Defense was making weird mistakes, like uncharacteristic mistakes. And they nearly gave that game away. So it's hard to say after 2 games that, you know, this Cardinals team looks like a team that should be 2-0. And they've played teams that are question marks in and of themselves. So it's hard to gauge this Cardinals team as a sit. But what's been working for the Cardinals, their D-line has been really good. Darius Robinson, Baron Browning, Mac Wilson Sr., Akeem Davis Geither, and Josh Sweat, your boy. You know, that D-line has been making some noise, and they've been wreaking some havoc. So that's something for sure I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes that I'm going to be keeping my eye on. They've got good talent and depth backed by a great defensive scheme from Jonathan Gannon. Jonathan Gannon likes to lean on that defensive line. I know you know that. And that's something that he carried over from Philadelphia and has tried to implement in Arizona as well. So Kyler's been precise. He's been smart with the football. Trey McBride and Benson have been really solid. And McBride is essentially the lone passing target that the Cardinals have been leaning on so far through these first 2 games. Benson is essential to their run scheme. So it's kind of like you have George Kittle and 2 guys. You have a guy that's really good through the air, and you have a guy who's really good on the ground. But historically, now Kyler Murray versus the 49ers is 4-4. 4 wins, 4 losses. Regardless of the wins and losses, the Niners have always struggled with Kyler Murray, and it's been really annoying. It's like Superman and Kryptonite at that point. You know, for whatever reason, the Niners seem to struggle a lot with mobile quarterbacks, and it's something that has been an emphasis. Today, Nick Bosa was actually kind of asked about what the game plan is going in. He talked about it. He was like, you know, the game plan, something that we've been watching film on and something we've been developing this plan around has been Kyler Murray. He's always who we plan for. And he says, Bosa even said he's excited for this game plan, which makes me think maybe there's something a little bit different that they're going to try. But regardless, it's been a guy that the Niners have struggled to stop on more occasions than not. So I'm curious to see how this game goes. And on that note, I'm also curious to see, for instance, if the Cardinals do win this game and Kyler Murray has a big game on the ground with his arm, whatever, what does that response look like for the third youngest defensive team in the NFL the second time we play? What does that look like? Have these guys learned from what that loss looks like? Have they learned from Kyler in his big game, regardless of win or loss? So a couple questions going into it. But looking at the Niners have got some injuries, and you talked about it with Mac Jones. At this point, I think signs seemingly are that Mac Jones is going to be starting and Brock Purdy is going to be QB2. And that's based on he's been progressing well with this injury, with this turf toe injury, much less than what Burrow's got going on. Burrow needed surgery. His was also on like his actual big toe. Burrow's was. Purdy's, from what I understand, is like center of his foot. So it's kind of between your like middle and ring toes and a lot. So it's a different type of injury, and they're describing it as like turf toe. So it's not the same thing, which is why I think you're seeing this quicker comeback. But Purdy was limited at practice on Wednesday, which was a good sign. He was out there. He was going through some reps, but limited. He wasn't a full participant by any means. So questions remain whether he'll start or whether he'll be QB2. But regardless, man, I feel pretty good about whatever quarterback we kind of throw out there. I will say, if you put Brock out there against this defensive line, I like what I saw from the offensive line on Sunday for the Niners, but against this defensive line, I wonder how much, whoever our quarterback is, how much they're going to have to utilize their legs. And at that point, is Brock's foot actually fully good to go for how much he may need to use it? So that's kind of the question I'm drawing right now. And I'm asking myself and kind of gauging this whole thing on is, does it make sense to rush Purdy back, whether it is truly rushing him back or not from this injury? Or do you started 2-0, you're looking good. Yeah, it's a division rival, but you've given yourself a tiny cushion early on. Does it make sense to let Purdy hang back, be QB2 and be an emergency decision? So we'll see how that plays out. But moving down the injury list, so Kyle Juszczyk sustained a concussion on Sunday. He's in good spirits. Everything seems to be going well, but he needs to go through all the protocols, and I doubt he'll play on Sunday, but we'll see. I haven't heard a ton on that. Trent Williams is dealing with a knee injury, and so he hasn't been a participant at practice all week, but I think that has more to do with just kind of precautionary. You're making sure he's good to go. Juwan Jennings is dealing with that ankle that he sustained early on in that game on Sunday as well versus the Saints. However, he did finish the game, caught a very crucial touchdown pass, which was awesome to see. And that was Brock Purdy's highlight of the game as well. He likes to point that out. So Ben Barch had a high ankle sprain. He's actually out 4 to 6 weeks. But I will say I liked a lot about the replacement there, and I talked about that in my post game. Please go check that out if you haven't. But George Kittle obviously on IR. So those are the biggest injuries that we've got going. We've got guys banged up, but Arizona has got a few injuries as well, and 3 of those injuries are to their same room, and that's the cornerback room. 3 of those guys got hurt last week. Max Melton, Will Johnson, and Garrett Williams all sustained injuries. They are limited and have not participated, a few of them, in practices throughout this week. So availabilities are up in the air for Sunday. We'll see how that shakes down. Obviously, no LJ Collier. He's defensive lineman. Defensive linemen's Walter Nolan, Bilal Nichols, both started the season on the PUP list. So they are missing some key pieces to their defense. I'm wondering at this point how much of an effect that has on the scheme that they want to throw at the 49ers. So that's the initial kind of things that are going on. And I have my keys on this game, but biggest thing, and I'm going to throw it over to you here, is that mobile quarterback situation. Like I said, we've seen this Niners team struggle with mobile quarterbacks before. The best job I saw them do in the most recent history was actually in the NFC Championship game between our two teams early on, when Jalen Hurts would drop back in the pocket and I would see Nick Bosa. He would break through that line with relative ease on his side, but he wouldn't just bum rush Jalen for the sack. He would kind of pull up and almost play like a zone to kind of gauge the situation. And I'm wondering how much of that comes into play. With Robert Saleh, it's a different defensive coordinator. So what do you think about this whole mobile quarterback situation? Do you think it's going to come into effect? Do you think it's something that the 49ers might have figured out?
I think scheme does have a lot to do with the success of mobile quarterbacks. I think that if you rely on playing a lot of man, you run into this issue, right, where you can spread a team out, all the receivers are covered, and if your O-line hangs on long enough, that it creates these holes for them. And that's kind of where Kyler gets success, because they can spread it out. But they're a weird team because they have James Conner. They have kind of a way to get big and stay kind of light at the same time. And I think that this totally can be schemed. I think now the personnel that you guys have with Bryce Huff, Nick Bosa, you guys have speed, and with Michael Williams too, you guys have speed along the edge. You have speed around at every spot. And now, especially when you factor in your defensive tackles, whether it's Gross Matos or Alfred Collins at the time, you got guys taking up the space in the middle too. So I think that what we're going to probably see from Saleh is going to be kind of like a way to spy on Murray without having to give up a spy. And I think that we're gonna see a controlled, layered rush. That usually is what you're gonna try and do. It's gonna be, can you be disciplined in your rush, maintain your gaps, and don't all break, contain. That's gonna be the issue. And it's gonna be interesting to see what they try to do. I think that's what makes running QB so tricky. Is you can do all the right things, but especially a smaller running QB like Kyler, who's just a little bit harder to bring down with his cartoonish style run, it really is. It is kind of a different challenge. It's not like a 6'5" Josh Allen where you can try and you have more room to grab him. It's kind of the reverse. Yes, Kyler may be easier to bring down once you get your hands on him, but that he's probably a little bit more slithery than any of these other QBs that you face. That's what makes Kyler unique. But I think that Saleh can scheme this. I still anticipate that he might have a run or two in there that might, extend a drive, or maybe even around the goal line for a touchdown. Like, that option still remains. But I think you guys have the personnel now on kind of all sides here. You guys are much faster now with being the third youngest defense. Now you got D Winters being able to slide around. We have Fred Warner. I think Kyler is going to have a much more difficult time in space than he otherwise would have. Last year's team, that wasn't the case. Even a couple years ago, you guys didn't have that kind of speed. You guys were a little bit more north and south, not east-west. Now we have a little bit of everything around this defense. So that's kind of where I think the Niners defense can take advantage.
Yeah, and 100%. Something I'm going to build off there that you talked about was the disciplined pass rush. And that was kind of what I had brought up initially when I talked about what that NFC Championship looked like a few years ago. And kind of what Bosa did. You got to be disciplined in how you do it. You have to approach it the right way. The Niners do like to run a wide 9 formation, which gets them into trouble against mobile quarterbacks. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason why you see these issues with these mobile quarterbacks is it has a lot to do with the scheme. It has a lot to do with the formation you run. So, Bosa saying that he's excited about what they drew up this week, the game plan going in, it gives me some hope, because it's not just Bosa saying, we've looked at this guy and we kind of have an approach that we like. No, he actually sounds excited about it. So, thank you. I practiced that. So, that's actually one of my keys, and I'll jump the gun a little bit. Is containing Kyler Murray. It's no secret. They struggle against those mobile quarterbacks. D-line needs to be disciplined with their pass rush. They need to, when that pocket collapses, they need to limit the holes for escape. And that's something that Kyler, being a small quarterback, he does really well. He just escapes through these small holes that you otherwise probably wouldn't see in most quarterbacks. And with how shifty he is, with how quick he is. I mean, he runs like a toddler out there. It's really frustrating to watch him just dice you up for 50 yards, which is how he opened up the game last year. So that's my first key for the game, but positives to build on for last week before I get into my last keys to the game. You know, Mac really held it down. I was pleased with Mac. I don't think it was a perfect game by any standpoint. Early on, especially, it was clunky. It felt a little weird. They had very early started with a 3-and-out, and damn near had another 3-and-out right after that. It was a 3rd and 14, and he dotted up Ricky Pearsall for a first down. So, without that play, you have 2 straight 3-and-outs against a team that you shouldn't be having a 3-and-out against. So, after that, he, and I talked about the 3rd down, his game opened up. And on the 3rd down note specifically, he was 7 of 12 on 3rd downs. He had 121 yards on 3rd down. He had 3 touchdowns and had a 132 passer rating on 3rd down. So whether it was Mac Jones or the scheme, something was working. And that's, if Mac Jones is the guy we're calling on Sunday, then I feel good about we get into these situations on a 3rd and long, 3rd and whatever, about the game plan, about Mac converting and keeping drives alive. And that's something that you got to do against this Cardinals team, is you have to find ways to keep possession. You have to win that possession battle, the time battle, and you have to, keep the ball out of the Cardinals' hands. They're an offensive team that want to run offense. They don't want to have to win defensive games. While they have a defensive scheme in play, they're missing a ton of guys. So what are they going to try and do to combat that? They're going to try and put up points. Best way to combat that from a Niners perspective is keep them off the field. So that's one thing to kind of keep an eye on. But O-line protection was great against the Saints. I want to see more of that. Obviously now with Ben Barch being down, like I said, Connor Colby was the guy who came in and replaced Ben Barch. And to be honest with you, I don't think you should turn back. I don't think you should look back. I think Connor Colby is a better player than Ben Barch. Ben Barch has a bigger body. He makes a little more sense on an offensive line. But what I saw from Connor Colby in that game, with his frame and just everything that he was able to utilize, it went extremely well, and he didn't let a single pressure up. So he was one of the highest graded players for the 49ers on Sunday, and that was really his first real play. So he'll get his first start on Sunday versus the Cardinals. I'm excited to see that. But I talked about it on the post game as well. They had great ball distribution, 8 different receivers having at least one catch, 8 different players having at least one catch. I want to see more of that. That diversity in your offense, to be able to lean on that many guys to make plays, it's tough to stop. So if that's scheme, if that's guys getting open, whatever it may be, that's something you absolutely have to keep building on. So let's get into the final keys here. Last year versus the Cardinals in week 5, I'm not going to talk about week 18 because that was a throwaway game. But week 5, the Niners were up 23-10 at halftime. And they couldn't close offensively or defensively. And that became a theme as the season went on. So far this season, the Niners have been closing games defensively. With Levi's rocking, the momentum building from weeks 1 and 2, I'm hoping the Niners can get off to a hot start here. The key at that point is closing properly. So I'm looking for a hot start. I don't want to see a 3-and-out if we start with the ball. And if we get the ball second, I still don't want to see a 3-and-out. Go down and get points, even if it's a field goal. Put the pressure on the Cardinals. That's what I want to see early on. And then I want to see you close that game properly. I don't want to see any letting up of the gas pedal, even if it's a 23-10 ball game at halftime, if it's 23-0, if it's a 23-23 game, whatever it is, don't let up. So that's one of my other keys. My last 2, keep Mac Jones clean and comfy, or keep Purdy clean and comfy versus that Cardinals defensive line. Like I said, that's a deep and physical line. Gannon has crafted that scheme around the defensive line. Mac's escapability is limited. Purdy has a better escape, plan than Mac Jones does. The physical nature of those 2 QBs is a bit different. So, when you look at Mac's stats when he's comfy versus when he's feeling pressure, drastically different. He's a much different quarterback. So if you can give him time, make him feel good, I think he's going to find ways to make plays. And I mean, on Sunday, you saw him hanging in the pocket for way too long, longer than he should have, and it got him in a little bit of trouble. So I'm wanting Mac to stay comfy. I want Purdy to stay comfy. Whoever the quarterback is, they need to not feel a ton of pressure. You need to try and keep them clean. My last key, the Cardinals have been beating teams offensively with Trey McBride. Not Marvin Harrison, not their receiving core. It's been Trey McBride. And the ground game, the rushing game, aside from Kyler Murray, James Conner. Yeah, I'm so bad with his name. James Conner has historically beaten the crap out of the 49ers as well, but he's having a down year after coming off of 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons. So it's a bit of a rocky start for him. We'll see if he gets integrated, but they're going to try and run the ball, and they're also going to try and use Trey McBride. So from that standpoint, I'm curious to see how they handle Trey McBride. And that's going to be one of my keys is, are you able to take Trey McBride out of the equation? And are you able to force Kyler Murray to use his receivers more than he has so far? And are you able to keep that ground game controlled as well? So those are my keys to win. Like I said, these are two teams that like to play each other closely. Kyler Murray even said it earlier this week. He said, they know us and we know them. These are two teams know just exactly how they want to play each other. So how this game goes down, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a close one. I think, the line right now is Niners are favorites by 1.5. At home, that's not really being favored. So like I said, I'm saying it's going to be a close game. I do think the Niners find a way to win this game. I just think with the injuries stacking up for both teams, but the production that the Niners have gotten at key times and key positions, I think it's going to pay off a little bit more in this game. And I think this game is going to be won on the ground. I think Christian McCaffrey is I think he's finally going to start breaking some of that defensive line that he's been seeing. They have been consistently the defenses that they're seeing early on, the Niners are seeing. They have consistently thrown the kitchen sink and everything they have at stopping Christian McCaffrey. It's no secret that he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. He was the best at one point. And the emphasis is to stop him and force the 49ers to lean on what is a banged up wide receiver group. So we'll see how that shakes down. But I do have the 49ers win this game. I've got it 23-21.
That's a very close score. I had 24-21. I think it's going to be close. I think the offenses are going to have moments, and I think both defenses are also going to have moments. I am a little nervous about, the back end for the Arizona Cardinals. I think now, especially since y'all added Kendrick Bourne last week, he had a few moments for you guys against the Saints game too. I think that despite some of the injuries, maybe Jawan is a little bit questionable. I think you saw that I think you were going to have enough juice. And I think the way that you guys used Brian Robinson last week was also very effective too. Getting him a little bit more integrated was nice. And those backup tight ends, Tonjes and Farrell, were really finding a rhythm. So I think you guys have what it takes to offensively to get the job done against a battered defensive team for the Cardinals. Their defensive front will be interesting to worry about with Sweat and Campbell. How I feel about, because Campbell was the one who won the game for them last week, but they really did. I think part of how they looked against the Panthers to finish last week, once all those guys went down, was Gannon in the heat of the moment without any game planning was kind of forced to just say, I'm running vanilla coverages. I'm running preseason stuff that, because we're screwed. We don't have any of our guys. So this week he'll have a chance to scheme, whether, he's a little bit more in the know of whether his guys are going to be there or not. So it's going to look a little bit better. But I think, regardless of which QB, I think it should be Mac, for the sake of, you don't want to rush Purdy back, especially when you're 2-0. It's a different conversation if it was the other way around. But being 2-0, just let Mac do what he does. If he throws a dud, then it is what it is. But that's the point of a backup quarterback, is just survive in advance. And this is another game that if your defense makes enough plays, gets a forced fumble, maybe gets a strip sack like you guys have been doing, gets a pick, I'm not worried. I'm not as worried about Trey McBride. I know Trey McBride's an excellent player, but you guys have two very capable linebackers who are able to kind of shut off that part of the field now. And I think the Cardinals are going to have to try and work around that. Now, that'll be an interesting test for your cornerbacks, and I'm excited to see that too. But I have the Niners winning 24-21. I think the offense just does enough, and I think the defense will make a splash play. That is the difference in this game. That'll be the trend for the Niners until next week, and then it's going to be much more interesting with some of the pieces you guys get there too. So things are on the up and up. This is a division game. Anything can happen. You really want it. You don't, you guys missed the opportunity with these guys last year. Like you said, you had them and then you didn't. So let's see if you guys can close out another game where, that's kind of been the story where like the Niners could have lost both of these first two games. And last year they probably would have. Those were the games that went the other way. The Niners are starting to win some of these close games and kind of switch things in their favor. And I think the Saints are scrappier than we were originally giving them credit for to start the year. And you guys played really well in week 1 against Seattle in the divisional, trying to figure things out too. So I think that like you guys are in a good spot, like with the softer schedule. If you guys go up 3-0, you made a good point about, winning back-to-back road games to start the year, seventh time ever. The last 2 times in the Kyle Shanahan era that the Niners went 3-0, they went to the Super Bowl those years. So, hey, who knows? Maybe things are lining up if you guys go 3-0. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited for you guys. I think it's going to be 24-21.
Yes, sir. So it's going to be an exciting Sunday. Both of our teams have got some question marks going in, but we're going to be getting some answers. And as always, we're going to have those post games out Monday morning. So check those out. We'll talk about the wins or the losses. Hopefully the wins. Probably the wins. Let's just go with the wins at this point. It's so much easier to talk about a win versus a loss. So keep them rolling, 49ers, keep them rolling, Eagles. But yeah, guys, I'm excited for this game. This is like you said, it's a divisional game. The Cardinals, we got swept by last year in embarrassing fashion. I talked a load of crap about them to start the season when we were doing our predictions. I said that they were going to be my casualty team, the team that sorry until you prove you're not consistently last place team, you're going to continue to be put there. So we'll see. This Cardinals team, are they good? Who knows? Is this Niners team good? I think they are, but got to be a little more battle tested, and obviously these injuries are something to keep an eye on, but I'm excited.
Heck yeah. So we did have a final thought that we wanted to bring up, and it's been quite some time, guys, since Summer League that we have decided to talk about the NBA, because really there really hasn't been much in the sense of more Kuminga rumors, a Kelly Oubre rumor got through around, but the topic we want to talk about isn't directly Kings related. It's more about our future Kings player, Dennis Schroeder, or Schroeder, however we want to pronounce that. But it involves his games that he played in the FIBA EuroLeague tournament that they had recently, just this past week, where Germany, led by Dennis, ended up winning, and they beat Turkey. And that was the team that featured Alfred Sengun, correct? I'm pretty sure Şengün's Turkish. Şengün balling out in this tournament as well, by the way. So that's something we're going to be paying attention to with the Rockets this year. But Dennis won the MVP of the tournament, and this is apparently part of his very storied career on the international circuit. And he has had a ton of success with Germany, and this isn't the only tournament like this that they have won with him at the helm. And they're now talking about him being in the Basketball Hall of Fame for how successful he has been in this stage, in the international circuit. So cool news for him. Great news for him. Will that translate to the season? I don't know, but I mean, his career has kind of been what it has been. But what do you think about our boy performing well this offseason, coming into our season this year?
This is a good opportunity to kind of talk quickly about him, because we never really talked about his addition to the Kings. Dennis Schroeder is a good player, and I think right now it's just tough to really buy into anyone or this team in general, because it fizzled out in a unfortunate way, the way that, you know, losing Fox and how that whole situation went down. But Dennis Schroeder is a really good basketball player. And the kind of production that he applies that he puts out in the FIBA tournament, like since 2014, dude has averaged 20 points essentially pretty consistently up until, you know, this season. And even this season wasn't his best in FIBA. So to see any form of a translation to the NBA and for the Kings would be awesome. I think it's something that the Kings absolutely need when you talk about how much they missed a point guard in the departure of De'Aaron Fox in the second half of last year. On that note, though, for Dennis, I know playing for Germany means a lot. And he's talked about it. It's something he takes an extreme amount of pride in. So for him, I think it's something a little bit deeper when you're playing for your country. And you want to go out and you want to try and do something that, you know, doesn't happen a ton. And you look at these FIBA results, you know, Germany is a consistent, you know, force. So to have the kind of history that Dennis does with Germany now, and to kind of be put on that that pedestal in a lot of ways, it's pretty special, and it's exciting for him.
No, absolutely. And FIBA is it's a different style of game that they play over there. They don't have 3 seconds in the key. Their 3-point lines like a tiny bit shorter. So it is kind of a different feel. And I think maybe that's why because it's not exactly the same game. It's a completely different game over there. So it makes it people always wonder, why don't they translate? That's where we fell into the trap of the whole Sasha Vezenkov thing, right? We're like, oh, he's this EuroLeague MVP. So was Luka. Oh, we're going to be fine. And like, it'll translate. And it doesn't always translate. So, but Dennis has been a consistent contributor in the NBA. We kind of already know what he is in the NBA. And you know what? I don't think at this stage with this Sacramento Kings team, consistency is something we've been dying for. And to have a player who is as consistent as Dennis, and we know what we're kind of get out of him, if we can just get reliable point guard play out of him, that's going to be great. And we're still in the process of figuring out what this roster really is going to look like, what the rotations are going to look like, how many of these guys that we see early on are going to be on the team moving forward. Like, there's still stuff that's going to happen in Sacramento, which kind of leaves this, all these moves that they've made are kind of been like, okay, cool. I still want to see what the vision is. But for Dennis, this is a great, moment for him. We're excited to have him on board to see what he can do. If he could just be a stabilizer for this offense, that'll be exciting too. We do need a distributor, and he definitely displays those things. And I think that if he can be that stable point guard for us, which is something we've been hoping for since Fox is gone, and we've been replacing Fox with nothing but shooting guards. So another point guard in here, I think, will be very important for us moving forward.
I actually do believe that Dennis Schroeder is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. He's been tossed around from team to team, and nobody, I think we did kind of talk about this early on when we first got him. Nobody really says Dennis Schroeder is a part of our team, for the next however many years. He's always just a transitional style player where it's like, we're missing a piece right now for whatever reason, or we're in an in-between year. We'll just pick up Dennis Schroeder. He's out there, or we'll trade for Dennis Schroeder, and then we'll just get rid of him when it's time. I think Kings fans are going to like Dennis. I really do. Dennis is a good player. He hasn't been in great situations necessarily, but he has impacted winning basketball at times in his career. And I think in a situation like Sacramento, you need that ball distributor. You need somebody who can run the offense, facilitate. You need somebody who can make defensive plays. He does make defensive plays. I think he fits a pretty large gap pretty well for the Sacramento Kings. So I'm excited about it. I think Kings fans should be as well.
Absolutely. And so, that's kind of what we're going to be touching up on. We'll see, now NBA is creeping up, guys. We're getting there. So there's going to be a lot more news coming in the NBA here soon as we really start getting into the dirty work of the pod here. So we're really excited about that. But for now, that's kind of the main news we got. We wanted to give Dennis his flowers, especially as he's coming onto this team. And it's a cool moment. It's a great moment for him personally. We, like you said, it's something totally different playing for your country. And Germany has been an awesome team for a while. They have good young guys too, with Franz Wagner, as well as those two have kind of been the focal point. And Dennis being kind of their guy throughout this, throughout his time, his basketball career, since he's been in Germany, he has been kind of their guy. They're like, it's your team, you're the leader, you take the reins of this team and make it something special. And they've found a lot of success with him. So yeah, he contributes to winning basketball, and I think that's something that we need more of, and I think it's going to be important. So we'll stay tuned, guys. We'll see what happens there. But did you have any final?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right, guys, so we're going to end that right there. This was episode 104 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all you guys watching on videos, our links to our social medias are up above. For all you audio listeners out there, the links to the description are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, and follow the show. If you have made it this far, we really appreciate you guys for sticking around. Let us know what you're going to happen this week. What do you think of our overreactions? Chargers fans, is it your year? Who knows? Indiana Jones fans, do you guys think that Danny Dimes is going to continue the success? We'll see what happens. Eagles fans, how you guys feeling? You guys excited for the Rams game? Do you think we got it? We'll see what happens. Niners fans, how excited are you? Do you guys think, if you guys think Brock Purdy's healthy, do you want him in there? Or do you want to keep seeing Mac Attack go at it? Or how do you guys think this game's going to turn out? So please stick with us, guys. We're really excited. We'll stick around for our post games that are going to come out on Monday. Hopefully, like Ben said, we're talking about a 3-0. Both of our teams being 3-0. This feels right. We're going back to our roots where both of our teams are successful. So let's hope that sticks around. With that being said, guys, I'm Marcos Conan. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jarrett's.
All right, y'all. We love y'all. We will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.